YouTube. What's up, guys? Oh man, I'm blocked on Instagram again. That's all right. All right, give me one second, guys. It's always something. All right. Welcome, guys. How's everybody doing today? Happy Thursday. Happy March. We're getting right through 2022. And I just got back from Kauai. I was on a little vacation down in Hawaii. Had an absolutely amazing time. A week of just playing, really playing in the ocean, swimming with sea turtles, catching waves. There was dolphins, seals, whales. Paradise. I absolutely love Hawaii. I spent a little bit of time living in Maui, and I spent some time living on Big Island as well. But I'd never been to Kauai before. It's an exceptional place, one of my new favorite places in the world, and it was really this connection with my. It was like my inner child was coming out. And I was just playing. I was just completely in the moment, just being, just having fun, and it was very healing for me. And so I'm back home now and ready to, you know, uh, get back to it. But it really taught me just how important our focus is on the things we focus on. This is what I talk about a lot, but just having my attention in the immediate moment, uh, it opened up this whole flow of just effortlessness, abundance, fun, joy, harmony, balance. So, again, anytime that you can do things that fulfill you, do things that charge you up, that nourish you, and just play. You know what I mean? Don't take life so seriously all the time, but get out and just be in nature and have fun. Very, very healing. Let's see, a couple of things I want to announce before I get into this. I've got a masterclass coming up next week. I don't have the link up for it yet, but in the next few days I'll have that ready. But again, this is going to be a pelvic floor masterclass. I've talked about this a little bit. I pushed it back a week. I was originally going to do it tomorrow, but I'm moving it to March 11th. So again, this I'm going to be teaching all about the pelvic floor, how to keep it balanced, and I'm going to teach an exercise, like guided exercises to help release tension from this area of the body, which most people have. And this is especially relevant if you have premature ejaculation, erection issues, pelvic pain, stiffness, tension down there. Again, a lot of people do. So this is going to be really, really helpful. Stay tuned over the next couple of days. I'll be opening up the registration for that. It's going to be really awesome. And I've got a new course coming very soon. I'll be announcing more about that, but I'm very excited about it. And what else? I think that's it for now. So I want to talk about semen retention lifestyle. Semen retention. As we are in spring here, at least in the northern hemisphere, we're moving into spring. This is a time of abundant sexual energy. Everything's coming back to life. It's in the winter. In the winter, all the earth's chi gets pulled inward, gets pulled down into the earth. And in the trees, they bring all their energy into their roots. They store all their sugar, their sap in their roots. But spring is this time of rising. Our sexual energy starts to rise again. We start to feel horny. We start to feel creative, especially. And so this is a time of cultivating this creative sexual energy. And there is definitely this link between sex and creation, obviously, right? Sex creates humans, but an overindulgence for men in ejaculation is throwing away that creative power. It's that creative force. It's our semen, it's our sperm, it's our essence. It's the seed of our cells to create a new life, right? And if you really think about the psychic potential, the powerhouse of energy stored in our semen, a single ejaculation could basically, it could repopulate the population of China pretty much. There's 250 million sperm in each ejaculation. Okay, like a quarter of the population in China, right? But what I'm getting to is, this immense power, this immense creative power that's in our semen. And when we just recklessly release this, it's a finite source. Eventually it dries up. And so men are experiencing burnout. They're experiencing excessive fatigue, a lack of motivation, a lack of ambition, depression, anxiety. Um, at a younger and younger age, they're experiencing sexual dysfunction because they're wasting this vital energy because we're so stimulated sexually by the world around us through media, through porn, and a lot of men become programmed. I certainly had this pattern to just ejaculate every day impulsively. It becomes this instant gratification, this quick fix of looking at Pornhub, watching a video, you get off, and you get that quick dopamine hit. But so what you're really doing is releasing tension. It's kind of this releasing tension. It's like a stress relief kind of thing. It becomes a habit, and you're just like, well, whatever. It feels good. And what I started noticing was that once I started paying attention to this, was to how vital I felt when I was sexually aroused. When I was in feeling sexual pleasure, as it was building up, as the orgasm was building up, it felt very, very powerful. I felt all this life in my body. I had all this creative energy. And as soon as I ejaculated, it was gone. And it was always like this disappointment because, yeah, it feels really good, the 5 to 10 seconds that you're having that ejaculatory orgasm. But afterwards, it's very disappointing because it's over and you want to do it again, but you can't. And you feel you feel this like this feeling of weakness, this fatigue, it's like this, you feel like something's been torn out from you sometimes, right? If you're in a really in a depleted state. And so I started to realize, wow, it's actually not that enjoyable, my sexual experiences, because I'm so fixated on ejaculating. And once I do ejaculate, it's over. There's nothing left. I can't continue. This kind of sucks. And so once I started practicing semen retention, for me, it was just like, I think my first goal was like 4 days. I went 4 days at a time. And even that, I was having significant improvements. I realized, wow, my energy is higher. And when I am actually having the orgasm, it's much more intense because there's actually something built up there, right? That's the thing. When you're ejaculating every day, you have you have no tank, no gas in the tank. You're running on empty. And so the orgasms you're having are just not that impressive. There's not that much of a charge built up. So when I was at least going 4 days at a time, I was, I started to build this feeling of drive, this ambition. And then I started going for longer because even then it was like, okay, I feel great for those 4 days. And then I feel kind of let down after I do ejaculate. So I started going for longer. I started going for a week. I started going for 2 weeks. And I started going for as long as I could. And it was amazing what I started to notice. I remember when I was in high school, my friends and I had this contest for like who can go the longest without jerking off. This is like teenage boy stuff. And it was, I think I only made it like 3 or 4 days at that time. And it was difficult. And so when I was getting into semen retention, it was like, wow, am I really going to be able to do this? But when you have the tools to do it, here's the whole thing, right? You're building up more energy. You need an outlet for it. You need a pathway for it to move in your body. If you just cram more sexual energy into your genitals, it's going to want to move somewhere to release the pressure. And for most men, that's going to be an ejaculation. And this is where a lot of men get stuck in the path of semen retention and sexual cultivation, is that they don't really have anything else to do with the energy. They just continue with their old habits, their old thought forms, doing the same things they've been doing. And this energy builds up. It builds up. It creates pressure, and eventually it drives them crazy. They do weird things or they cave in and they ejaculate, right? So when I really got into semen retention, when I started, because I originally heard about it as the context of brahmacharya back in, I think, 2011. I was like 20. How old was I in 2011? I was like 22 years old. And so I heard about brahmacharya. I heard, watched this video of this guy talking about like, oh yeah, I don't ejaculate ever. And I have so much energy and I never get sick. So I was like, all right, I'm going to try it. And it lasted about 3 days because it's difficult to change something like that without a new pathway of expressing, right? Especially our sexual energy. It's very, very powerful. It's very ingrained in our being, the habits we have around it. So to just stop doing it is not very realistic for most people. Like, yeah, maybe you'll go a certain amount of time, maybe go a month, maybe go 2 months, maybe go a year, but eventually you often cave back into old habits because you haven't created a way to channel that energy, to change the form of it, to really harness, digest, and use that energy for something greater. So when I really started getting into semen retention in 2013, 2014, I was also beginning to really practice Qigong seriously every single day. I was doing Zhanzhuang practice, holding these static postures. And so I was opening up the energy channels in my body. I was also starting to work with the microcosmic orbit, this main channel in the body that I'm always talking about. And it became pretty effortless for me to practice semen retention, to be honest, because, simultaneously I was learning to have non-ejaculatory sexual stimulation. And so I learned to stimulate the sexual energy and then instead of ejaculating, draw it through the orbit, store it in the body. And I remember feeling a bit edgy at the end of my sessions, like I really wanted to ejaculate, but I walked away from these sessions feeling like really, really charged up. Instead of feeling fatigued, instead of feeling tired, instead of feeling like I'd lost something, I felt like I'd really gained something. And I knew at any time that I could, you know, do it again. I could have sex again or self-stimulate again, whatever. So it's like you're always on, you're always uh, your libido is always there, right? Which is not the case when you're constantly ejaculating. So it just felt this power, this immense power. And I noticed that I started to feel a lot more confident. Like at the time, I was a full-time musician. I remember I was performing at this like bar or something like that. And I used to feel very kind of like socially anxious, at that time in my life. Like I would just feel like really around people. But I walked into this place and I just felt like, I just felt like, yes, I felt very confident. And I just felt like I was exuding this aura, not really in an egotistical way. I just simply felt good. I felt confident in myself. And like people reacted to me very differently that night. It was very interesting. And so this really uh, put the seed in me to be like, okay, this is something very real. This is having very real benefits, and this is something I want to continue. Another huge thing, what was really transforming for me as well, was around how much it changed my sexual experiences. And this is where a lot of guys get hung up with semen retention because it's like this thing of, oh, well, I simply can't masturbate. I can't have sexual pleasure. I can't have sex if I want to retain my semen. And so it creates this, suppression scenario where you're not engaging in something very healthy, which sex is, which orgasm is. So I learned how to remove ejaculation from the equation so that self-stimulation or sex did not result in ejaculation. And I was just talking before about how, you know, sex and sexual experiences were very disappointing for me. Often it ended up because after the ejaculation, it was all over and it was like, okay. And I often wouldn't enjoy what was happening before ejaculation that much because I was so fixated on getting to this point. And that completely changed when I started practicing these sexual kung fu exercises. I remember because there's no ejaculation in mind. It's like, well, I'm not going to ejaculate, so there's not going to be that factor in it. So how can I enjoy this as much as I can, and maybe work on experiencing this full body orgasm thing I've heard about, and it really really changed it because yeah, you're not having that huge explosive ejaculatory orgasm that I was so addicted to, but I was experiencing something different, this more subtle experience of orgasm where I could extend the sexual pleasure as long as I wanted, where I could, go to a point of high arousal, then use the drawing practice to move the energy, to store it in my body and just feel that, just like, wow, what does that feel like to move that arousal into my dantian or into my head, whatever. And it feels amazing because you just keep building the sexual energy, you keep building the arousal, you keep building it, and you don't lose it. You feel very charged up. And this can be a bit too much. It can be a bit edgy. It's like too much heat, too much energy if you don't have your circuitry in place. But for me, fortunately, I was doing Qigong practice. I was learning to open up my channels, grounding this energy. And it felt pretty amazing. And again, I would walk away from these sessions just feeling like, wow, I feel amazing. And now like, well, I want to put my energy into something now. So again, I was a musician. I would create music. I was very, very creative at this time. I was just like making these amazing compositions. I mean, they seemed amazing to me. I don't know, maybe they're crap. But and previously in my life, I used to think like, oh, I need to like smoke weed to be creative. It's like, or I need to drink a bunch of caffeine. But this was a changing point for me. It was like I just activate my sexual energy, arouse it, draw it through my body, do some qigong, and I have this powerful creative energy that I could just put to work for like indefinitely. I just had so much energy, and it was a massive shift in my life. And so, um, to kind of bring this to a completion, basically, for semen retention, I found it's about making it sustainable. It's having realistic goals, having a realistic approach to it, right? Because the thing I see a lot of guys do is like, okay, semen retention means I can never ejaculate again. I can't have sex. I can't masturbate, whatever. Okay. And so they kind of take this extremist attitude. And then, again, maybe they do it for a month, 2 months, a year, maybe 2 years, and then they give up. It's too much. It's too frustrating. They have a relapse, right? I hate that word personally. And they're like, well, since I ejaculated, I might as well, watch porn again and ejaculate several more times, and maybe I'll try it again. But I never really had that approach. For me, it was like, if I go, 4 days a week without ejaculating, that's great. I've won. And then maybe I do ejaculate, big deal. Then I can just go back to this practice. I can start building up the energy again, doing qigong again. And so for me, it wasn't about trying to go forever. It was simply about not frequently ejaculating, not going back into old habits. And with that, I would say I was very successful. And I've been doing this for 8 years now. And it's only gotten better and better. I've learned to really understand my body, like understand maybe during sex what's going to push me over the edge, when it's actually time for me to ejaculate, like maybe it's been 4 or 6 weeks, and like I now know that there's a certain interval it will actually benefit me to ejaculate. Mostly because, especially because I know how to draw the energy out of the genitals before, you do a few powerful draws to pull that energy out, and then you ejaculate. You're not losing that much, right, if you retain for a while. So there's so many factors to it. And again, the most important thing is having your foundations in place. You have some sort of energetic practice so that your channels are opened up, so you have space in your body to hold this energy, channel it, and transmute it, right? And you have healthy ways to deal with negative emotions. I use energetic practices and I teach these as well. This is the big thing, is you can amplify. I talk about this all the time, but if I repeat something, it's probably important. If you don't have ways to manage your shadows, your negative emotions, you don't have a way to deal with these things, clear them from your body, then you're probably just going to feed those things with your sexual energies. You start to build it. And I see this a lot in men in kind of the semen retention scene. So you have to be very careful about this, right? So you have your foundations, you're opening up the channels of your body. I highly recommend doing qigong, doing breath work, doing yoga, doing something to open up and learn how to work with your internal energy, learn how to feel it, learn how to circulate. This is a very crucial skill if you're going to play with sexual energy at a higher level, I would say. And also being able to engage in sex. This is the big roadblock for a lot of men, is like, okay, it's easy to retain your semen when you're single, but what about when you're having sex with someone, right? When you're in a relationship. So a lot of men just go back to their old habits of ejaculating every time, which is still depleting. It's less depleting during sex, but still, you don't want to be blowing your load every time. And so you learn how to separate orgasm from ejaculation. You learn how to develop your sexual abilities so that you can have non-ejaculatory orgasms, so you can control ejaculation and really, last for hours, be an amazing lover, both for yourself and for your partner. And that's when semen retention really becomes effortless, because you have all the foundations in place. You're not forcing anything. It's all natural because you've created this with the foundation of your practice. It just, your sexual energy naturally starts to flow inwardly in your body through your orbit instead of wanting to be ejaculated out. So it just becomes, you're no longer addicted to ejaculating, basically, right? Which is a transition, of course, but that's why it's a sexual kung fu. It's time and discipline. It's time spent training. And there's another point I was going to say here. Oh, it'll come back to me. But yeah, that's it, guys. That's the semen retention lifestyle is one of enjoyment, it's one of effortlessness, and and this is what I was going to say, is you also really, really need to have things to put your energy into, productive things. And I'm not talking about playing video games or things like that, but creative outlets. Very, very important. You want to create stuff with this energy. If you're not creating something, then you're going to want to ejaculate and release it. So get into something artistic, something creative. I play music. I create content, creating a business, creating art, creating poetry, whatever it is. And just keeping yourself busy, keeping yourself productive, and that will keep this circuit of energy flowing. Because if you want to call on higher levels of energy, then you need to have a higher level of service, so to speak, right? You have more things you're putting your energy into. You're making the world a better place. You're channeling this, right? So I've been ranting for a while, guys. And again, for me, semen retention has been a game changer. It's been a life changer. And there's just no going back for me at this point. When you learn how to have non-ejaculatory sex, have full body orgasms, learn to really, really work with and cultivate the sexual energy, it's words can't explain. The ecstasy, the energy, the experiences you have, the creativity, just the flow of life force. It's incredible, So there it is, guys. Retain your semen. And if you want some, if you guys are new, you want some kind of beginning tools, go through my sexual kung fu exercise playlist. Because this is, we can talk about this stuff all day, but if you don't have a practice, if you aren't doing something, if you aren't working on this, developing it, learning to work with your energy, learning to open up your channels, then, it's just words, and words are empty. So you want to have a practice. So go through my sexual kung fu exercises playlist, check out my qigong playlist, my breathwork playlist. I've got a lot of tools for you guys. I've got a whole, I have probably over 100 videos on my semen retention playlist where I just talk a lot of different aspects of semen retention. So, I've got over 400 videos on my channel talking about all these things. So, use that to stay motivated. And with that, I'm going to answer some questions. So feel free to post your questions in the chat. Feel free to type in where you're listening in from. It's always cool to see where everyone is. I know we've got an international group. Rohan says, sorry for leaving the question beforehand from a different time zone. Rohan, your question might have gotten cut off or not posted properly. Sorry. Sometimes YouTube doesn't post the things that you type in the box. So if you feel like I'm ignoring something you've typed in, it probably didn't actually show up for me. So you could type it in again. So sorry, Rohan, didn't show up. Mirsha Castellan says, hello, John. If I listen to an erotic audio without touch and without release once a month just to feel the arousal, does that affect my semen retention journey? I mean, everything's going to affect your semen retention journey. It's a effect in what way? So erotic audio versus porn, right? Versus like visual porn. I would say it's definitely better for me personally, because I experimented with this a bit as well in the beginning when I was kind of transitioning out of that. It's still, I would say it's definitely, for me personally, I feel like it's better because there's something about this visual stimulation that really gets us as men, at least me, definitely I noticed. Whereas listening, hearing audio, it's a bit more like this receptivity. When you're looking, when you're using your eyes, you tend to be projecting outward. You're like sending energy outwards. When you look at a sexual image, it pulls you into it and you project into it. You get like stuck to it, right? Audio is a bit different, but it can still have that same kind of excessive fantasy, excessively stimulating you as far as your arousal and things like that. But I mean, once a month probably isn't a huge deal. If you feel overall it's working for you, if you're getting benefit from it, nothing really, negative about it, then whatever works for you. Derek Trevino, what's up, brother? Derek says, good to see you back. I know you said you've completely given up regular Kegels and only focus on reverse Kegels. However, aren't regular Kegels good for the prostate specifically? This is a good question. It's a fair question. And to be honest, I'm not sure entirely 100%. I think that it could definitely be beneficial as far as squeezing the prostate, kind of giving a gentle massage, but that's only one way to work with your prostate. And there's many, many other ways, right? Specifically, the reason I gave up Kegels, at least for the time being, I stopped doing Kegels, I believe it was in September, this last September. So I'm hitting about 6 months here, 0 regular Kegels, only doing reverse Kegels and balanced pelvic floor exercises. By the way, I'm going to be going really deep into this subject, basically, in my pelvic floor masterclass next week. But I'll give a little preview here. The reason I stopped doing regular Kegels was because I found that, once again, back in like August, September, when I stopped doing it, I noticed that some of these tension patterns were creeping back in for me, where I noticed I was doing like a Kegel basically throughout the day a lot of the time. And I had this tension, and it really linked to like nervous system tension, mental tension. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do another experiment, because I did this a couple years ago where I stopped, or I think it was last year, where I completely stopped doing Kegels for a few months. And this time I was like, okay, I'm just gonna stop doing it indefinitely. If I notice any negative effects, I feel like my pelvic floor gets too loose or something like that, then I'll start doing them again. But that hasn't happened. So specifically, I noticed just how many layers of tension I had in my pelvic floor, which I imagine most men do too. And the thing with the pelvic floor is that it's not just like this isolated muscle group. It connects to other areas of the body. It connects to the thigh muscles, the glutes, it connects to the abdominals, right? And generally, when you're working one of these areas, you're also working the pelvic floor. So just isolating the pelvic floor with Kegels is often overtraining it, makes it too strong, makes it too tense, and you have difficulty letting it go. That's what I have found personally. So I think basically, unless you have an incredibly weak pelvic floor, like you're incontinent, maybe as you're like getting older, unless that's happening, then you probably do not need to be doing Kegels. So basically what I've been focusing on is, releasing tension and really, really balancing this whole area. Because I found that, I do squats, I stand in Qigong stances for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day. And so I'm getting plenty of pelvic floor work from those things I found. But to answer the question about being good for the prostate, again, there's potentially, yes, that squeezing might be good for the prostate, but there's many, many other ways to you can simply push a finger up in the $1 million point, the perineum, the taint. You can push fingers up in there and kind of push in a massage, get the same effect. One thing that's even better, this is what I learned from Lauren Johnson. I share it a lot because it's fantastic, is you take a tennis ball and you sit on that with it under your perineum. You kind of move around a bit, kind of grind on that tennis ball, and it will massage the prostate, I think, in a superior way to doing a Kegel, right? And you can even directly massage the prostate. So there's many, many ways to work with that. Sure, you can do it with a Kegel, but for me, the downsides of the Kegels outweigh the benefits of that. So I keep my prostate healthy in other ways. It was a long-winded answer to that question, but hey, I think it deserves it. PJed, Jed Drzejko, sorry, if I'm saying that weird. It's asking ideas on celibacy. Well, celibacy, it can be a positive thing or it can be a very destructive thing, right? It depends how it comes about in your life. There's often, I know this is a big thing in a lot of spiritual paths, brahmacharya specifically, they're all about celibacy, right? The benefit of this being that, you know, you're practicing semen retention and you're not kind of over stimulating yourself with these kind of potentially draining excessive sexual thoughts and things like that. But the downside to this is that it often becomes a suppression of your sexual energy. It's not necessarily natural for humans to be celibate, right? We're sexual beings, and our sexual energy and sex, I believe, is a deeply spiritual healing act if we know how to engage it properly. So depriving yourself of sex isn't necessarily a good thing. Personally, I believe this has partially been used as a control system for humans because it inevitably creates frustrations and kind of this split between the various aspects of your being when you try to suppress your sexuality. So, that's my own take on part of this. But I would say specifically, it can be a positive thing I think celibacy should only be pursued if it arises naturally. If you're like, you know what, all of a sudden I'm just not interested in the opposite or whoever you're attracted to, I have no more interest in sex. Like it just doesn't sound appealing to me. And I just have lost interest in it. And, now I'm celibate, I guess. So I think that's the only way, if it's like an organic thing that arises from your practice, from whatever's going on, maybe you're doing a lot of internal alchemy, you're really cooking that gene, creating this internal sexual polarity with that, right? Yeah. So, but if it's something that you're just like, well, I've, heard this dogma, this belief system that tells me I should be celibate, even though I don't want to, but I'm going to do it. And I'm forcing myself to do it, even though I have all these sexual desires and these frustrations, but I'm suppressing them. And it kind of creates neurosis for yourself. Right. So, take that as you will. Drinking some nettle tea here. It's good spring tonic. It's good for the kidneys, kind of cleansing. It's got iron in it. Hello, bro from Massachusetts. Zeke the Geek from Massachusetts. Awesome, brother. FaZe Clan says, could you please talk a bit about self-stimulation cultivation? So I made many videos on this, but basically the idea is that as far as energy cultivation, your aroused sexual energy is very powerful. It's very just raw, fiery firepower. It amplifies things. It glues things together. And it also has positive implications on your health, right? If you know how to use it, right? How do you feel when you're aroused? It's like everything gets turned up to 10 all of a sudden, right? You're turned on. We have a specific word for that. And everyone knows what this feels like. It's a very different sudden shift in your physiology and your mental state. Everything just changes when you're aroused. What if you could do that to other aspects? What if you could suddenly arouse your health? You could arouse your creativity, your spiritual path. This is the idea of working with sexual energy, right? And so on a practical level, how you would do this as a practice, self-stimulation is you stimulate the sexual energy. So you stimulate your penis or whatever you got. While simultaneously, using the techniques to move the energy through the body. And basically you arouse your sexual energy, you stimulate that, whether that's through sex or by yourself, as long as you wish. Just don't, hit the point of ejaculation. Don't get too close to the point of ejaculation either. So you're not creating a lot of like tension and buildup in the prostate region. And then you stop stimulating and you draw that energy in the body. I have a video on this called the power lock. Check that out. It's a simple kind of the basic method of doing this. There's much more advanced levels as well, but you stop and you draw that energy into the body. First, you start with the dantian. And so now you've aroused your sexual energy. So it's, it's burning, it's fiery, it's activated, it's powerful, it's expansive. And then you draw it into the body. So you've now stored it, and you can just notice what that does to your state. How do you feel the rest of the day? Do you feel a little more creative, a little more energetic? Maybe you feel more tired because you have excessive fatigue. You're not resting, so it's kind of showing you, that you need to rest more, right? So it will change things, I would say. So yeah, there you go. Self stimulation, cultivation. But you can also, you can bring the energy anywhere. You can bring it up to the brain, enhance your creativity. In my course, Multi-Orgasmic Man, I teach how to bring it into the organs to strengthen various virtues and positive emotions. The glands, which is good for your vitality, your longevity, and the spinal channel to increase your yang energy. Lots of things you can do. Heather says, "Hey, I'm a woman, but I appreciate your tip on building the Dantian before doing the microcosmic orbit. Thank you." Awesome. Thanks, Heather. Thanks for representing the feminine here with all of us dudes here on YouTube. Yeah, that's huge, right? Because the microcosmic orbit, circulating, it's a pathway and you're circulating energy through it. And, if you start here, that's fine. You're still going to be moving energy. But if you want more juice, so to speak, so that the microcosmic orbit becomes more tangible, it's usually not very tangible in the beginning. Doesn't mean it's not working. You just don't have, as much current running through it, we could say, or the chi isn't quite thick as it could be. So a good way to start is working on the Dantian. I have the Dantian breathing video. You build Dantian. The Dantian is the elixir field, right? It's where the dawn grows. The dawn is the elixir. And so you build this Dantian, this magnetic field, which stores this chi, stores the yang chi. You build it, you build it, you build it, it thickens, it starts to compress, it starts to refine the chi. So you have a storage center and uh, this space where the chi is stored, collected, condensed, and compressed, and builds up here. And then you use that, run the orbit with that chi you have built up in your Dantian. It's on a whole nother level now. It's much more tangible. And there's other, as your practice evolves, as you get into the Nada and alchemy practices, there's more refinements of the chi that you run through the orbit as well. So yeah, I don't know, not really secret, because a lot of lineages train in this way, where they'll spend maybe even like 5 or even 10 years building the Dantian before even starting the orbit, right? But you can begin with it right away. Sean, 1996 boy. What's up, brother? He says, "I'm on 30 days of semen retention and have been doing all of these practices, but I still feel social anxiety, depression, etc. What am I doing wrong?" There's a lot of factors to these, everything that you're experiencing in life. It's not all about semen retention. It's not all about qigong. These are very, very, very important parts of the picture, but maybe there's other things as well. Like, it's like, what are you spending your time doing the rest of your time when you're not practicing, you're not doing semen retention? Are you letting your mind run all over the place, thinking about negative things? That's a big thing, is learning to bring your practice outside of the formal practice and kind of manage your emotions, manage your mental state, manage what you're focusing on the whole day. That's the real Jedi training. Do you spend time in nature? That's huge. What I try to spend at least one day a week where I get out of the city. I have like a little personal retreat and I hang out in the country for a day and a night. And I did that yesterday. I'm back today. And it's just, sometimes I go out there and I feel like I have this huge, heavy backpack, just like all this garbage of, inevitably just happens living in the world, living in a city, dealing with a lot of various things. We inevitably accumulate stuff. So I go out, I just get out of the city, I get out to nature, I lay under a tree, I do my practice, and it just feels like I just unload, a clear massively. And it's great to walk under the stars at night, to look up at the stars, and just be in nature, be in the natural flow. It's huge. But again, anxiety, depression, social anxiety, there's going to be a lot of factors to this. What's your diet like? What do again, what do you do? Are you living a lifestyle that is not making you happy? You can't really suppress that with qigong practice and semen retention. If you're not really living in your purpose, it means, sometimes our pain, well, we say, oh, I have this depression, this anxiety, I don't like it, but it's often trying to tell you something, saying, hey, maybe something's out of alignment in your life. Maybe you're living in a situation that's not really resonating with you anymore. Maybe it's time to get out. Maybe it's time to, pursue that career you wanted to, or to, learn this skill, to move to this other place. I don't know. I can't really say exactly. But there's a lot of, look at everything in your life, right? And again, manage your environment, manage where your focus is at, manage what you're doing with your time. Are you doing things that fulfill you and nourish you, or are you not? Maybe work with a healer, a counselor, a therapist, something like that as well. It can be helpful when you're really struggling with these things. Derek Trevino's from Austin, Texas. Awesome, brother. I've always wanted to go to Austin. I have a feeling I might be there sometime this year. Johnny Blaze says, can reverse Kegels cause sexual problems like erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation if done every day? Thanks. I do not believe I definitely wouldn't say so if you're doing them properly, right? You want to be make sure you're not doing reverse Kegels too hard. Like if you're doing them so hard that you feel like pressure in your head, you're pushing too hard. Because if you push too hard, you'll create more tension. So it's kind of like a relaxation, and you know everything's relaxing down there. But yeah, if you're relaxing your pelvic floor muscles, it's not going to cause, from my understanding and experience, erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation, because premature ejaculation is often much more linked to a very, very tense pelvic floor. That's what triggers your ejaculatory response, is this tension. The pelvic floor starts to tighten, tighten, tighten. It can't tighten anymore, triggers the spasms. You ejaculate, sympathetic nervous system kicking on. So, um, no, I don't. I believe that reverse Kegels are highly beneficial and will not cause these things. But sometimes, well, as far as erections, I'll say anyway, this was an interesting thing I experienced, because for years I realized, as I was transitioning into these relaxation pelvic floor techniques that I'm talking about now, right? Because for years I was doing the thing most people are teaching, which is squeeze the pelvic floor, and engage the muscles, the PC muscle, the BC muscle, whatever, squeeze, 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 hold it back. And what I found was that I was actually relying on that squeeze to hold an erection, because my pelvic floor muscles were out of balance. Because what happens for a lot of men is that you constantly have this hypertension in your pelvic floor. And when you have this hypertension patterns, it's requiring resources, requiring blood to hold this tension in the muscles. So it's actually pulling away from what's happening. It's pulling the blood out of your penis to hold this tension, this hypertension in your pelvic floor. So this is a very common cause of like weak erections for men. And so I was counteracting this by squeezing the pelvic floor, which kind of, it does push a little bit of blood into the penis and hold it, but overall, it's not great, in the long term for your erections overall, right? And so when I transitioned into doing reverse Kegels and pelvic floor relaxation during sex, at first I thought I was having kind of weaker erections because my muscles were rebalancing. I was like, can I really just relax my pelvic floor and hold an erection? But as things balanced out, I was having much stronger, much more sustained erections as my pelvic floor was loosened up, because that's how the body's meant to be. It's meant to be relaxed. That's when things flow properly, right? This is a basic understanding of, you know, uh, Taoist health practices, is that tension, physical tension, blocks the flow of energy and blocks circulation, creates problems. So my erection got much, much better, much stronger, much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Dependable when I loosened up my pelvic floor. So there's a lot of factors to, premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction. Oh, Sean says, my pessimistic friend and I were stargazing, and he said, I like looking at the stars because it reminds me that nothing really matters, which depressed me, making me feel like life is meaningless. Any advice? Well, it's again, it's we create whatever meaning we want to. If we can always find meaning. I don't believe that this is all meaningless, that we came here just randomly, like, oh, whatever, we're all gonna die. I mean, on one aspect, it's like, yes, overall, like when you look, you consider, like, do you ever think about infinity? Just like, a trillion years isn't even a speck of dust, and you think about infinite time, it kind of blows your mind. But so in a way, like, nothing really matters in some ways, but at the same time, it's like we're here, and we're here to learn. We're in this school of experience. We're collecting information, we're collecting data. Our souls are coming down here into these bodies, walking around in these robotic meat suits, humping, smoking things, eating, doing whatever we do as humans. And we take that experience home with us, wherever it is we came from before here. So it's like we're here to gain something. I would say we're here to collect information, to experience. And so you can just, spend your days believing nothing, doing nothing, wasting your time, or you can do something to enjoy, have fun, play. I was talking about being in this video, how like connecting with the inner child and just being in the state of like not being in so much like existential, like, oh, what's the meaning of all this, and just be in it, just have fun, just, Today, Mariah and I went to it's kind of like a gymnastic type place. There's lots of like trampolines and foam pits and like ninja courses. And it was pretty much all just little kids there. And at first I'm like, oh, should I really be here? I'm an adult. But like after a few minutes, I was just like, woo, swinging up the swings, doing flips into the foam pit. And just like, it was really like my inner child coming out. Just like, you stop thinking and you just experience, you just play, you just have fun. So when you're getting too stuck in your mind and, you know, too much thinking, which this sounds like, play, have fun, get in your body, do somersaults down the grass hill, something like that. Mirsha Castellan says, are electrolytes drinks healthy? It depends. There's a lot of different electrolyte drinks. Some of them are good. Some of them are just, not like they add like sugar and artificial colors with some electrolytes in it. So, um, but electrolytes are important. Electrolytes are like minerals, energy conducting, electricity conducting minerals. Coconut water is great for electrolytes. Also, getting minerals. Shilajit's amazing. I take magnesium. I take some sea minerals and things. So again, it depends what's in it, but overall, you definitely want to get your electrolytes. Zeke the Geek says, love that interview with you and Lauren. Yeah, Lauren's awesome. I found his stuff back in 2015, I think, and uh, specifically his version of some of the sexual practices were really awesome. And I've kind of put my own spin on them as well, developed them in a different way because I focus more on the pelvic floor relaxation versus the kind of engagement. But yeah, Lauren's awesome. Dude's a beast. Egg and Bush says, how important is diet actually when it comes to having improved energy? Would you say being a vegetarian or trying to move towards a vegetarian diet is essential to escape a low energy place for good? First of all, diet is extremely important as far as your energy because, if you're not getting proper nutrition, not the proper fuel for your body, you're not going to feel well. But as far as being a vegetarian, it's not necessarily going to be healthy depending on, here's the thing with diet is I'm not going to get too much into this, but because it kind of becomes a religious war for a lot of people. But from my experience, I've tried pretty much everything. I was vegetarian for 7 years. I was vegan for 6 months. Personally, I've never had such a low libido as I did during that period. Um, Testosterone was super low, especially when I was vegan. Wasn't getting enough minerals and things like that clearly, even though I was doing all the supplements that you're supposed to do when you're vegan, but some people just can't properly absorb inorganic minerals and things like that when you're taking all these supplements. So um, I'm Northern European. Northern European blood does better with animal protein and high fats, low carbs. And once I started doing that, I actually felt way, way better. Like when I started eating some meat again, obviously I only do quality pasture raised meats. I had much more energy, much more vitality, much more grounding. So, uh, moving to the diet that's right for your body type, I can't tell you what that is. Only you can, do your research, experiment. I think experimenting is the greatest thing because we can say, well, I read this paper by this scientist. They did this scientific study. It's proven that this diet is the only one for everyone. I think that's all bullshit. You try it and you compare. It's like, okay, I'm going to eat this diet for a month, see how I feel, give it time, right? Then I'm going to try this diet for a month. Do I feel better? Do I feel worse? That's the only thing I would say you can really rely on is your own experience. And when you do energy cultivation, you become very, very sensitive. Like if I eat something that's not good for my body, I know right away. Versus, and it's the same thing. If I eat something that my body likes, I know right away. What I crave is typically very good for my body. So yeah, don't think that, eating plants makes you more spiritual than eating meat because everything's alive. Everything has life force. Plants feel pain too. Read The Secret Life of Plants. That's a big eye opener for me. So, you know, good luck out there with all the trending diets and conflicting information. I know that's why I say just listen to your body, experiment. Royal Calvin says, "What about DMT? What about DMT? You, I don't know. I don't know about DMT. I don't, I wouldn't recommend relying on external things, but these things, psychedelics can be pathways for some people, but they can also get you stuck in places as well. That's why I prefer internal energy cultivations because it gets me higher than anything else. No side effects. I'm not relying on this external thing. Eric says, would you recommend all of the Angion methods, or is there one in particular you recommend more than others? For me, I followed kind of the progression that, Janice, the guy lays out, which is, angel method 1, 2, and then 3. And I personally found number 2 and 3 the most effective. I'm doing, angel method 3 pretty much exclusively now, and it's pretty effective, I would say. But with I did a lot of the second method to kind of build up to that, because it's all about developing your blood vessels in the proper way and improving the circulation, growing your blood vessels. I also use this the saber practice, the percussive striking of the penis, uh, and had really great results with that. So basically, I'm doing the Angion 3 method and the saber method. Those are the ones I'm using right now. Vamp says, I'm on a clean diet, workout. I'm on the regular cold showers, meditation stuff. I'm 2 weeks into this retention. I'm struggling with frustration, annoyance, etc. What should I do with chaotic emotions? So here's the whole thing, right? Energetic work is different than eating healthy, than working out. And depending what type of your meditation you're doing, that's helpful. But you need to, it's really important that you're specifically, this is what I, talking about at the beginning of this video, like having certain specific practices for working with the sexual energy is really the key, and also specific practices for dealing with negative emotions. Here's the whole thing why I say you need to have the foundations before you do semen retention, because otherwise, yeah, it kind of sucks. You just feel angry, you feel frustrated. It's like, "Ugh," and it's like, why would you want that? It's we often have this idea that more energy is better. I need bigger, more badass energy. But what if it turns you into a psychopath? What if it turns you into Darth Vader? Darth Vader wanted a lot of energy and he got it. But where did that, where did that put him? Right. So having this perspective, I recommend have you seek balanced energy, right? Happy, good feeling energy, that is successful, abundant energy, right? So be a little more specific about what you're trying to accomplish versus like, well, I just need more, 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 more. So having said that, yeah, some practices to deal with negative emotions will be very, very helpful to purge excess heat from the body. I go into depth in this in my multi-orgasmic man course, but I have some exercises on YouTube here as well. Specifically, the breath work I find very helpful with this. Check out my breath work playlist. The testicle breathing practice, that is essential for semen retention. Working with the microcosmic orbit, essential. I don't recommend doing semen retention unless you have a specific practice to directly move the energy in your body. And for me, that was the big key. Sean 1996 boy says, I'm worried that I'm growing an obsession with a woman, but I feel a woman that I feel would make an amazing partner. I feel we would make such a good couple, and I'm comparing her to every other girl I meet. I worry I'll never meet a girl that makes me feel the way she does. Any advice? Well, there's a lot of women out there, and I've been on that path too. And usually, I found I I feel like I was talking about this in one of my last, maybe it was with my group, my multi-orgasmic man group. But basically, um, I had this pattern of really being infatuated. Like I would meet a woman and be like, oh, she's like the one, oh, I'm just obsessed with her, And eventually I learned that that was kind of a warning sign for me, that usually this was, we tend to attract our traumas through our partners, like mommy daddy issues, incompletions from our parents, which were kind of our original sexual relationship in a way, not saying it was directly sexual, but just sexual in the fact that there's kind of a polarity in this, this yin yang dynamic that we have with our mom and our dad. It's kind of our first relationship, right? And so we often attract partners that kind of repeat these patterns because they never really reached completion. So that may be what's happening here. So be very careful about this when an obsession is arising, because it's you putting your earth in someone else, putting your center in someone else, right? You're saying like, oh, they'll make me happy. Oh, when I'm within, everything's great. And that lasts for a little while. It's kind of the honeymoon phase. And then after a few months, it's like, oh, actually they have the crisis phase starts to come up, right? It's like, oh, they have this weird issue all of a sudden, and or they're, you know, eh, things start to get weird, right? So I guess the best advice I can give is, first of all, don't be attached. That's very important. When you start to get really attached to things and obsessed with, especially like relationships, people, it sets you up to really experience a lot of pain. When you put your center in someone else, what happens if they're gone? Your center's gone, and you lose your shit. I think we've all been through this. So focus on yourself first and foremost. Loving yourself. You don't need someone else's approval. You don't need someone else's love. I mean, it's great, but like if you seek that entirely, you must give that to yourself first of all, and just hold your center, not get too attached. Just watch your steps there. It's a dangerous world at dating. Mirsha says, would you recommend a 30-day water fast? It depends. If you're like really have some crazy chronic stuff you're trying to cure, but if you're just like, well, I heard I should do it, so I'm going to do it. Fasting can be really, really good, but this long of a fast can really mess some people up. You have to be very careful with this stuff. I know fasting is a big trendy thing right now, but be careful with it, right? You don't necessarily have to do this intensive fast to get, to detox and things like that. There's more balanced ways to do it. So be careful, I would say. Okay. Egg Bush says, thoughts on alcohol. Lately, I've been having a hard time staying away and I've been losing my routines, getting more sick, and I'm thinking of ways to avoid it. In my opinion, alcohol is a very, very vile substance. I would avoid it at any cost. I stopped drinking completely. I haven't touched alcohol since 2015. Yeah, so it's been 7 years, whatever. It's gnarly stuff. Alcohol really lowers your vibration. It just opens you up to weird stuff, and so, like you said, you lose it's like, oh, I come home, it's like, oh, I could either drink a beer, or I could do qigong, I could go to the park, I could go for a walk and be in nature. And usually when you choose the beer, it just kind of goes downhill from there, right? So I don't recommend alcohol. It's sure, for like occasional social gatherings, whatever, if you really need it, whatever, if you really feel it supports that, whatever. But if you're serious about improving yourself and your energy levels, alcohol does nothing good for you. I recommend cutting it out entirely. I see alcohol as kind of it's one of the leashes around humanity, right? Like a lot of people just drink every night and numb themselves with it, lower their vibration with it, and just like try to forget about the fact that they're not happy with their life. And if people actually, instead of doing that, started to correct the kind of roots of the issues that are causing them to feel like they need this thing in the first place, the world would be a bit of a different place. Zeke the Geek says, love that advice on infatuation, although I think it's important to not really be attached, but at the same time, if you're not attached, I think the love doesn't feel as strong. Well, I think love and attachment are very different, right? Because true love is unconditional, right? It's like, I love this person. Like, even if, I'm not going to be with them, all right, I can still love them, right? Versus like, well, I love this person because I'm getting something from them. But I'm attached to them. And if if I lose that person, we're no longer attached, then I hate them now. And this is kind of the human thing. Easy to say, right? Sean says, any further advice on gaining more centeredness to the point where you feel fulfilled within yourself and don't need any external sources for happiness? I mean, this is the training, this is the practice. And, it's something that's going to kind of wane and wax and wane, right? Like, I've had various levels of just being 100% like feeling really, really, really centered within myself. Nothing outside of me can really affect me, right? I've been really, really strong at that at many times. And then, uh, sometimes there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of weird external situations, and I start to get pulled into the external world. But for me, whenever that happens, I'm very quickly reminded to step back within myself, to disconnect from the outside world. This is when I get out in nature. I do a little personal retreat, go for a trip, travel. For me, traveling really breaks up my patterns, going to new places, spending time in nature. So, really crushing your practice, I would say, and connect with nature. And these things are connected for me. I notice that I feel the best overall when I do my practice outside in nature. Like, there was this summer, It was a really cool summer for me. It was like I was working in a restaurant, one of the last real jobs I had, it was back in 2016. And I would get up if, I worked from like I think 7 to 3 was my shift. So I got up at like I had to get up at like 5:30 in the morning to get ready. I had a little bit of a drive. And then um as soon as I got home from work, I would jump on my bike, go to the park, and do qigong like all all evening, all afternoon. I'd be out there for hours, and I'd come home, cook a meal. I didn't even have wife. I didn't even have internet this time in my life. I was literally like living in this little cottage. My friend was renting out behind his house. I was living in this little cottage with a yard. Um, I didn't have internet. I would like study Taoist philosophy and qigong in the evening. I would cook a meal for myself. I'd go to sleep early and wake up and work for 8 hours. Come home again on the bike to the park, do my practice, do it all over again. That was my life for a summer. And it was really simple. And it was really, obviously I needed to go a bit beyond that. But I think my point here is that when you're really strong in your practice, you have a really positive routine, you know, going deeper into meditation, going deeper into qigong, going deeper into these practices, right? Because it's one thing just to like, okay, I'm doing qigong, I'm kind of waving my arms around, okay, I'm imagining this energy. It's another thing to go much more deeper into it, where you keep studying it, you keep developing your knowledge of it. You look at what are my limitations in my practice? Oh, my structure's not really there. I'm have too much tension. My mind's just wandering all over the place. So it's like this is the Jedi path of consistently training to go deeper and deeper into your practice, right? To deeper, deeper flows of energy, training to really, really empty your mind, to really learn to practice meditation, to just completely empty thought streams and just go deep into, your body, into the experience, the energy, whatever. And yeah, I hope that's helpful. Maxwell says, "Hi, Jonathan. Thank you for doing this. Do you work with people one on one?" I currently don't do a whole lot of one on one stuff. I prefer to work with groups just because it's a bit more, I feel it's a bit more efficient. My time and like the group energy just makes everything more powerful. Sometimes I offer it to, men who've been through my course, Multi-Orgasmic Man, but I'm also doing a teacher training for everyone who, going through the course is kind of a foundation for being able to do the teacher training. That's opening up soon. And that'll be very, much more direct way of working with me. Rendell Frank says, "Would you ever get to the point where past trauma is gone with these sexual kung fu exercises, or would you always have to deal with it?" This is going to vary from person to person, and I would say it, factors depending on how identified you are with that trauma, how stuck it is in your body, because we often identify with things that have happened to us, and that keeps us in that pattern. Like a lot of people who experience a lot of illnesses, they identify it. They're like, "Well, I'm ill. I have an illness. I am, you know, illness." And they're partially telling themselves a story because they're identifying with it, and now it's part of their identity. So even if they have a somehow get rid of it, it often comes back or a new disease comes in, right? So mindset and like your identity and identifying with these things, like, "Oh, this was painful. This was some real trauma. It's really in me." So you start to just you're like talking yourself into it more, right? I know it's easy to say this, but at the same time, so there's many factors to this, right? And some people have an easier time letting go than others, and practicing letting go is a big part of this. Learning to let go of traumas, learning to deepen your practices and clear, to be able to clear. So it's going to vary from person to person, and often what I found personally is like, I mean, I've cleared some really big things with my practice, some huge things that have never come back. For me, I'll talk about one thing. One thing is, well, big thing. Okay, there's many things. I could talk about a lot of things here, but one thing was this kind of we were kind of talking a bit about this pattern of infatuation and really getting attached to people. For a lot of my life, definitely from my teenage years till my mid 20s or so, I was very attached to women. To like, oh, I need a relationship. I need to be with someone, or else I'm lonely. I'm unhappy. And um, I was in this relationship with a woman for my first serious relationship for almost, I don't know, it was almost 5 years, or maybe it was 4 years. It was a significant time, and like that ended by her. basically, I was living in a house with her and two roommates, and she's basically had been sleeping with one of the roommates and then kicked me off out of the room to the couch. So I'm sleeping on the couch. She's, hooking up with this guy, and it was a very painful experience for me. And right after that experience, it was like, oh, I need someone else. I need a new relationship. So I just like, and I kept getting myself back into similar circumstances because instead of like addressing why am I attracting these situations in the first place, it's just like, well, I just need someone new. And so um, eventually realizing it was actually after I did transformational breath work. I teach this in the course, right? A lot of you guys have done it. It's powerful. But the first time I did this, you know, 90 minutes of intense, basically holotropic type breathing, I had this experience of like realizing like what I'm looking for from these women, I have within myself. Like I can give myself this love. I can be content with my own company. I can have fun and just like be happy by myself. And like it was like, holy shit, like of course. And so I always had these stories like, oh, well, she's my soulmate, my twin flame. So I have to suffer a lot because I have to, these stories, these, spiritual bypass things and stuff. And I realized like, no, I'm just like attracting or I'm pursuing kind of desperately the very wrong type of person, and I'm not really confident in myself to, you know, own my own energy and to be content being who I am. So that was a huge thing that cleared and never really came back. All right. Clap Man says book recommendations to start practice. Check out my video I made. It's one of my past several videos, probably one of the last five, basically my top five sexual kung fu books, which were um, number one, Tao Secrets of Love, Cultivating Male Sexual Energy by Montauk Chia, Michael Wynn. That one's a classic. The purple book, I think it's right up here. It's right up there. I don't know if you can see it. It's right where my finger is. It's right here. You can barely see it on the shelf. Um, what else? Tao Sexology, Stephen Chang is really, really great as well. I think those are solid starting points, but go check out that video and see the others. Sean says, how can you properly learn spiritual practices when there's so much conflicting information out there? Thanks again. Really appreciate it. But yeah, here's the whole thing, right? Anything you find, anything you hear, you can always find the exact opposite, right? And I started running into this issue as well. I was like, but this teacher said this, but you're saying this. Well, what's true? And you have to get used to it. Accept that maybe there actually isn't only one path. Maybe there's infinite number of paths based on people. This is the whole thing of Taoism is, and I'm not saying I'm a Taoist. I don't claim any identity. I am who I am, whatever. I'm finding my own pathway basically. Right. But Taoist philosophy is like, everyone has their own Tao. The Tao is the path. It's the way, right? It's a way that you can take, and there's unlimited paths. There's unlimited Taos, it's like, and it's the whole, the Tao Te Ching thing. Like I think it's the first line is the Tao that can be named is not the true Tao. Or it's like, I think the Tao that can be explained is not the true path, right? So it's like as soon as you can fix something and get into a system like this is how it is, it's not really, I don't know, it's not really the ultimate, right? Because you've actually, the thing is that source is infinite. It's absolutely infinite. We come from this primordial space of absolute unlimited potential. And as soon as you start creating from that, as soon as something has a form, it's like it's this. Because if it's this, it can't be that. Then it's no longer source. It's distorted in some way, we could say, right? So anytime you're like looking at this fixated system, like, well, it has to be all these ingredients. If you do something else, you're dead wrong. Then that's not really going to take you back to source, maybe because it's a limited thing and it's rigid. It's this certain thing, right? Maybe it'll get you somewhere, but so you kind of have to get out of the confines of dogma and rules and things like that. Eventually, I would say, like for me, it's simply about I absorb information. I look, I listen to the teaching. What is this person saying? I feel it in my body as well. You learn to like feel your body when you're hearing information. I mean, watch CNN and and pay attention to your body. The things you feel. I think might be a good sign that hey, maybe there's something wrong with this information. Maybe it's trying to like distort my mind. So you learn to use your intuition. How does it feel? When you hear something, you get like that goosebumps. Your hair stands up. You're like, oh yeah, that's usually truth for you at least, right? And the other thing is that, we all have we're all perceiving this reality, this energy field, this quantum field we live in, like our computer is picking up these Wi-Fi signals. All the information that ever was is on the internet, and it's floating through the air. And our computer, it translates this into images, into things. So we see this, right? And it's possible that everyone has a different filter. We all perceive things differently. So we all literally live in a different reality. We all have these different views of reality. So there's only one reality, but there's infinite perceptions of it, right? And so that's why we have all these different religious paths, there's all these different belief systems that are all justifiable, right? Same, we're talking about the diet thing. Why is it that people are like the carnivore diet's the only thing anyone, it's what humans are meant to have. And if you don't follow it, you're going to be sick and die. So people are thriving on that, but there's also people who thrive on the vegan diet, but they're like, well, the science supports this. So it's like, there's always going to be conflicting things. You have to become your own teacher. It really is. I strongly recommend against having one person who you're like, everything he says is truth and everyone else is wrong. We humans, we often have this tendency, maybe it's in our genes, maybe we're kind of molded to be this way, that we like to put ourselves beneath others. We feel like, well, I need this person's information to reach completion. And the biggest turning point on my journey was when I realized, like, wow, like my teachers, I've had amazing, amazing, amazing teachers. I'm really grateful for the teachers I've had. I've had, phenomenal teachers that have brought me farther than I ever imagined I'd be able to go. But eventually I started to see their limitations. And I was like, wow, well, if I kind of hold these limitations myself, I'll be limited as well. I'm not saying I'm better than them or anything like that, but it's just, I started to see that I the true information, our own truth, it usually comes from within ourselves. It's like, where did all this stuff come from? Where did qigong come from? Where did the Bible come from? All this stuff. It came from people, divine inspiration, we could say, or downloads, and they knew how to listen to their intuition. We could say the higher self, whatever. And this information comes out of that, right? We all have the capability to do this, and this is a huge part of the training. Is instead of just listening to everyone else, because as long as you're relying on someone else for information, you're probably always going to be a little misinformed, right? You learn to download the information yourself. I think this is kind of the highest goal of at least one of the big goals of practice is that you don't need a guru, you don't need a teacher, you become that. So it was a long-winded answer, but it's very fitting, especially in the world we're living in right now. There's this thing of, I was reading this thing about how this is kind of a period where gurus will start to become a bit, um, what's the word I'm looking for here? Compromised in some ways. Some of their teachings will become distorted. We're in a serious kind of cooking pot for all of humanity, and we're just, in this climactic time on planet Earth where it's absolute chaos. It's absolute, just like it's like what is going on here? A lot of people are feeling this, right? And a lot of people are losing their centers. They're losing their minds in some way, and they're starting to share some weird stuff with people. And you have to be very careful right now, is what I would say. So again, it's good to, hear information. It's good to, hear different perspectives on different things, but don't get too fixated on any certain, we also have this tendency of like, well, like if you're learning a particular subject, the first book you read on it, it kind of becomes your standard, and anything that conflicts with that, you're like, well, that's wrong because, this information I had first. It's the whole thing of like your cup becomes full, so there's no room for anything else. So the real trick is to keep your cup empty, to not feel like to not feel like you know everything, and stay like a child, stay open, and stay present to learn new things. Right? It's when you become rigid with belief systems and dogmas and thinking you know everything that it's the stiff tree is easily broken because maybe something all of a sudden becomes revealed that your paradigm's been wrong your entire life and you're broken, right? But versus you're flexible, the hurricane comes, the flexible trees can move with the changes. Like, okay, I was wrong about that, whatever. I wasn't fixated on that. Derek says, awesome. When you planning to start this teacher training, I'm going to have the page for it open. Just finishing up now. It's taking a little longer than I thought as I got the curriculum together and everything, but I should have it up tomorrow, definitely in the next week. Again, everyone who's taking multi-orgasmic man, you'll get an email about that. And yeah, I'm excited about that. Chosen One says, how did you get over the thought that the other guy might be bigger than you? That would get me super hung up and compare myself endlessly. I never really thought that he was bigger or better than me. It was just like, it was more just this feeling of betrayal by the partner who I'd been with. But eventually I saw like, well, I had my own kind of weird habits and, I wasn't completely emotionally mature and definitely not in like knowing how to manage like polarity dynamics in a relationship. I was a pretty kind of yin beta male, quite frankly, at that time of my life. And so, I don't know. I dealt with it eventually. That's really when I got into yoga and meditation, actually, because the pain, the emotional pain of that resulted in like manifesting physical pain in my body. And I was going through all these weird things. So that I was like, yoga, I got to do yoga. I don't know. I just have to. And started doing yoga, started doing meditation. And eventually that led into doing Qigong and things. So this incredibly painful experience actually was the fertile ground for a really deep personal transformation. And it made me want to improve myself. It made me want to say, it made me say, I don't ever want to go through this experience again. How can I improve myself? How can I, develop myself to where this won't happen? And I definitely went through it again, but things got better and better overall. Stephen Watts says, any enlargement exercises you'd recommend that are safe and effective? Any online courses or workout programs that you'd recommend? Enlargement exercises, I guess you're talking about penis, or are you talking about finger enlargement? I've got the exercise for you. The only thing I would recommend as far as penis exercises at this point is Angion method, Angion. I used to do like the stretching, the jelqing stuff, and found out that it's incredibly destructive. I just about, did some serious damage to myself doing these things. And also this, like the stretching thing, I got, you can create length with it, but you're not actually developing the blood vessels to feed the extra penis length. So your erections might actually get weaker as you do that. So you have to be careful with that kind of stuff. Again, Angion method is the only thing I recommend. It's really, really solid. You can look it up and study on it a whole bunch. I teach the exercises in my course as well as kind of a bonus, but basically the idea of this practice is that you're feeding the vascular network of the penis. You're building it so it enhances. So as the vascular, as your blood vessels get bigger and they grow and they become more extended, that can lead to tissue growth in the penis itself. But if nothing else, it really, really enhances your erections. Like I've, been blown away. Like it feels like this hydraulic pressure in the penis. It's intense. It's quite amazing. Satnam. Stephen Watts says, can you do too many reverse Kegels? Can they be unhealthy in some way? I mean, you can do too much of anything, right? If you're reverse Kegling all day, every day, you might strain yourself a bit. But if you're, do it in moderation. Don't do it all day. You can do it several times a day. You can do several sets a day. What I like to do is any time of day I notice I have tension in my pelvic floor, I'll do a deep breath, do a little bit of reverse Kegling, and release the tension. But if you're pushing your maximum to where you feel like your head's going to explode, if you do that all day, you might have some issues. So everything in moderation. Michael, what's up, brother? Says you're speaking my language regarding following one's own truth. Sean says, does penis size matter? I don't think so. As long as you have a few inches, because you think about it, a woman's G-spot, it's really not that far in the vagina. And, as long as you can stimulate that, she's probably going to be happy. Getting a little bit deeper into the cervix is great as well. But honestly, you only need a few inches, right? Men often really, really obsess about this. And I would say it's much more important to have strong erections, because you can have you can have a 9-inch penis, but if you can't even get it fully hard, it's not going to feel very good for her, right? It's the hardness, I would say, is much more important, erection quality, than size. Chosen One says, pain in prostate when I'm using Kegels before the point of no return. Solution for this, I haven't built up my internal energy foundation yet, so I'm using Kegels. Thanks so much for your help. I would highly recommend stop doing this, stop doing Kegels. I did this to myself. You're creating hypertension in the pelvic floor. If you keep doing this over time, you can create some serious pelvic pain for yourself. I've been through this. This was another turning point in my transition from the tension practices, was like after non-ejaculatory sex, sometimes I would have these crazy pains in my pelvic floor area. And yeah, I thought it was like my prostate. I'm like, I got prostate cancer. I'm going to die. Like, what's going on here? But it was just hypertension in the pelvic floor. It can cause that pain. So I highly recommend stop using Kegels. It's not doing you any good. Reverse Kegels. Look at my pelvic floor rehabilitation video. Yeah, the Kegel thing is, I don't know where this, I mean, I can see where it came from for men, like the strong emphasis on Kegels, because we want to feel like we're in control and like muscular tension makes us feel strong. But in regards to the function of, our sexual organs, tension down there is not a good thing. It can cause, these things, pain. So loosening up the pelvic floor, balancing it out, is going to be very helpful. Use the reverse Kegels, relaxation versus tension and strength. That will cause these kinds of blockages. Crimtali says, you spoke about doing visualizations before and how that helped manifest your ideal life. Can you speak about how I did that? So again, visualization, not just in the sense of like I'm seeing the image like a screen in my head. It's more of a feeling, I would say, is the most important thing as far as manifestation, right? It's kind of the whole law of attraction thing, is that to attract something, you have to be able to be in that vibration. How do you put yourself in that vibration? You feel that you've already received it. You feel that you have it already. So you create the feeling within yourself. For example, if you're trying to manifest $1,000, imagine, so you put yourself, I recommend kind of getting into your heart, activating the heart by just putting your mind in this area of the body. When you activate the heart, it has this incredibly powerful energetic electromagnetic field, way stronger than the brain. So get into the heart space, and then you create the feeling. So again, if you're trying to manifest $1,000, what would it feel like if someone just handed you $1,000 check? Sure, you can see the visual image, but most importantly, feel that emotion. You'd probably feel pretty excited if it's something you really want. You'd be like, yeah, what? So just feel as tangibly as you can that excitement, that emotion. I think engaging all the senses can be good, but especially the feeling, the emotional sense, I think is what really, creates that communication with the universe. Like, this is what I want. And you're using presence, the present day sort of language, you could say, which is feeling it right now. When you're like, okay, I want $1,000 in the future. The future's an illusion. It doesn't happen. So it's now. I feel it now. I've just received it. The gratitude, the excitement about it. Practice really, really, being able to put yourself into these states, and you may be surprised. And you do it consistently. If you just do it once, universe is like, I don't know if he's that serious. You do it every single day, over and over and over, you might be surprised what starts to change. Does girth matter? I worry I'm not that girthy. Don't worry about it, And if, again, quality of erection, I know us men, we get identified with our penis. It's like my self-worth is my penis size, but honestly, a lot of women couldn't care more. It's more about like, do you have good presence as a lover? Are you able to control your ejaculation? Are you able to like read her body, pleasure her body, and can you get hard? Okay, guys. Thanks everyone for joining. What else to share? That's it. I got the pelvic floor masterclass, from some of the questions. I think this will be really helpful for a lot of you. That's next week, next Friday. I'll have the link up soon for that. It's gonna be really awesome. Wish you all, much love, much abundance, much happiness and joy. And, again, create what you want in your life. Have fun, play, be like a child, be open. Don't get fixated on ideas and information coming from other people. Learn to filter information through your own heart. Take care, guys.